Well, welcome everyone, Asia 21 young leaders. I am Wenchi Yu from the class of 2011. Feels like a long time ago. How wonderful to reconnect with everybody, even though it's only virtually. Asia 21 was created to build a sustainable and resilient network of leaders who care about our communities, societies, the Asia Pacific region, and our planet. We not only come together every year to celebrate achievements and personal growth, we come together to solve problems and identify solutions that are born out of the region and can be perhaps shared and applied elsewhere. We're able to do this because we're bonded by our shared humanity. After all, we are all Sabians. The past year, the whole world experienced something truly unprecedented, COVID-19. It has forced us to close borders in order to slow down its spread. It has also forced us to work together in innovative ways. This conference is evidence that people's desire to forge a human bond during this pandemic is only growing despite physical barriers erected by the virus. Today's session is to share the stories of people overcoming despair and find hope during this challenging time. And we're really honored to have a panel of doers and storytellers. Penny Lo from Singapore, Guan Wang from China, and Anam Zakaria from Pakistan. Penny, is there anything you want to talk about this leadership session?
Sure, thanks for that opportunity, Wenchi. So sometime last month, a group of Asia 21 young leaders came together, specifically it's Tanya, Natharon, myself, and later on joined by Nitin and Rumpa, to really, push forward the idea of mindfulness, especially in this very chaotic time where leaders, could be confused or, having to deal with too many issues. And also the COVID, lockdown has also created a lot of mental wellness issues amongst just everybody and not just leaders alone, right? And we thought, one of the things that we could do is to really, try to get people to become much more anchored within themselves. And therefore, we started the mindful leadership movement so that people have a chance to do some inner engineering. And hopefully when they are a lot more anchored within and they are a lot more aware and they love themselves, much more than during our hustle bustle time, we could then, extend this love and reunite with our community, with our country, with, the world, so that, we could bring the goodness from inside to the outside, and we would, and leaders would also make decisions that are mindful rather than mindless. So we are going to start, a series in 2021. It's going to be a full year series in collaboration with Asia Society, and we are trying to form a community of mindful leaders within Asia Society and beyond. So we hope that everyone will come and join us. We have a session to start that community on the 9th of December. I think it's about 12:30 Asia time, Hong Kong time.
Wonderful. Just another way for us to connect with each other. So obviously COVID is on everyone's mind. Just curious if you can share with everyone, for panelists, how has COVID impacted your work or not over the last year? Let's perhaps start with Guan.
All right, Wenchi, thank you for this opportunity. Basically, the first known origin so far of the coronavirus was, of course, from my country, unfortunately and tragically, Wuhan. And I remember very well. That was a few days before the Lunar New Year. It's a very important holiday for the Chinese and the entire people in Asia. And, things started to got out of control, and, things got really bad. I think as Chinese, we do have a lot of introspection to do over, this virus, the wet market and stuff. The habit of consuming illegal wild animals, and we did later on make laws to prohibit that. But now I can report that things are really, I would say, getting back to normal, work-wise, life-wise. Businesses are resuming. It shows up in the numbers. IMF predicts that China will be one of the few major economies that will register positive growth. That aside, for my personal work as a journalist, as a reporter, I feel that a lot has changed. For example, we're utilizing the digital technology a lot more, as probably many of you have. A lot of the interviews, I do 4 shows a week on CGTN, and I would say 95% of the times we interview our guests remote right now instead of having them in the studio. There were some technical difficulties, but by and large, we feel that this can be surprisingly a very efficient, if not more efficient, way to conduct interviews. And we feel that we got to cover a lot of interesting stories. I personally didn't go to Wuhan, the epicenter, but I did travel to Zhejiang, Shanghai, Jiangsu, a few other provinces that I can see with my own eyes why lockdowns tend to work better in Asian cities and countries. In that, number one, it is enforced, it's verified, very strict discipline, strict enforcement, and also is really the great sacrifice and collective mindset demonstrated by the folks, not just here in China, but also I think across Asia, Singapore, Korea, the region of Taiwan, all over the place, Japan. And at the same time, I think it's, unfortunate that many of the countries are still experiencing the second wave. I think we need to, as journalists, highlight the best practices of, cities across the region, how and why lockdowns work or tend to work better in one place over the other. But also, I think we do, as Chinese media, have room to grow when it comes to, doing more introspections as to the origin of the virus, more transparency perhaps at local levels. Why it started over there, why local officials were hesitant to, uncover the stories in the first place that, partially got to us where we are today. So lots of opportunities, but also, unpleasant situations too, I would say.
Fascinating. We'll come back to ask you more questions about, what you have observed and as a journalist, how to tell the story, truly present the truth to the world. How about Anam? How has your work been affected or not?
Wenchi, thank you for this opportunity. So I work a lot with elders as an oral historian. I've been working, in South Asia to bring forward these narratives that we often don't get to hear in our mainstream textbooks and mainstream histories. And that requires a lot of sitting with and interacting with the elderly population. And that's, of course, been hugely impacted because of COVID. So a lot of my time over the past few months has been spent kind of thinking about how I can reimagine this work and how I can use digital, technology and other ways of connecting to make sure that these stories are still being recorded and that they are being shared. And I'm in the process, I think I've been trying to just use this time to build more connections and build more relationships relationships with community members. One of the things that I'm trying to do now is also run these workshops online for young oral historians, so that we can train people from within the community to go in and to safely document some of these narratives and stories and experiences of elders without me or other researchers necessarily having to step in. So just kind of thinking about how we can do this work more effectively in the current circumstances. But some of the other work that I do is actually as a cultural practitioner connecting school children across different countries, particularly India and Pakistan. And one of the programs that I was a mentor for this year is the Summer Institute at the University of Iowa. And since last year, they've been bringing together these students from India, Pakistan, and the US in Iowa City for this culturally immersive creative writing program. And this year, of course, we all had a setback because we couldn't travel, and we were really disappointed. But it was really also incredible to see how the team came together at Iowa to redesign the entire 2-week program into a 10-month-long online kind of series of lectures and webinars and interactive sessions and craft workshops. And it's been so fascinating to see these students who've never met each other, who've often never even met people from, these respective other countries, just connect so beautifully through different art forms, creative writing, through just dialogue and interaction. It's really been heartening and beautiful, and we're hoping that next year we can still come together and it will be more like reuniting rather than, meeting for the first time. So it's been really wonderful to see, the possibilities also and the ways that people are being so creative in making sure that the work continues in whatever way it can right now.
Wonderful. We want to hear more stories about those. And, later on, I want to ask you all actually how, if you think, connecting through technology is going to be the way forward or not. But Penny, tell us what you're seeing in Singapore and elsewhere.
Well, I think in the case of, can you hear me now? It's good now? Yeah. So in the case of Singapore, I think we never really had a full lockdown, but we did have what we call a circuit breaker, which means that, you can still perform your day-to-day activities with some limitations. Where we are, now, it's that we're trying to get back as fast or as safely as possible, to normalcy again, allowing, larger gatherings and all, given that, the so-called strike rate of COVID, on our community is actually very, very low. We had a lot of cases, the first wave, with the foreign workers dormitory, but by and large in the community, there are very, very few cases and even fewer deaths. So in that sense, I think Singapore is performing quite well. I was part of the SARS warriors, back in 2003. So when COVID, first came, it really brought back a lot of memories. And of course, after SARS, we also, made sure that we had a whole series of protocols in place, because then we were flying blind. So we roll out those protocols, and of course, we realized later on that this virus itself is much more virulent and fatal. And therefore, we had to add on to that. So we learned, how to manage that on a national level, on a policy level. Separately, on my own front, what was really interesting, as an advisor and strategist to various innovation agencies, one of my clients, which is actually China Innovation Agency, it's a state level, provincial level agency, whom I do help, to sort of shake hands across the globe, actually saw a boom in the business itself. Previously, a lot of the potential technologies, refused to come to China because of IP issues and so on. But, when COVID broke out and they saw that Europe and US is going to take, a long time to recover, whereas, China has learned its lesson and is recovering well, they all started calling me. And that was sometime in April itself. saying that we are willing to, talk and have some handshakes now. So it's kept me relatively busy. And I have my own foundation, which is the Social Innovation Park. And on that front itself, we are moving from an NPO type of setup, and learning how to then inculcate, not just high touch, but also high tech into the whole, NPO service itself. And that we are still learning very hard. But other than that, my parents are having more of me, my family is having more of me. So I think that's good news.
Yeah, I mean, even though has been a challenge for many, but I also think we all have seen the opportunities that it's presented because we're forced to think differently, right? Guan said efficiency, Anam has been using technology platforms so much more. Penny's got to spend more time with your family. So let's just say, once the world has been vaccinated, how do you see the world moving forward? Is technology going to change the way we connect with each other? And is that going to replace our desire to actually connect in person? Or do you think, there's going to be some kind of change in the future? I mean, even we think about travel. I actually think, we probably saved a lot of, carbon footprint over the last year, which is good for the environment. We're seeing many animals more out in the cities even. What does this all mean? Who wants to start? Juan?
Okay, cool. I think human to human, face to face interactions can never be replaced easily. And I think in this digital age, what I found as a reporter in Washington for the past 8 years, recently relocated back to China, Beijing, and then, being born and raised in China and been to most of the Chinese provinces. This experience tells me one thing, that is, in this digital age, I think people tend to receive personalized news alerts, newsletters, and they tend to get fed news and information and opinions, views that they already believe in. That is a problem, because when I go to Midwest America or, some southern parts of America, small town America, people are really that nice, down to earth, but their knowledge about Asia, I would say, are limited. And when I go to small town China and talk to folks there, their perception of America, of the West, are simplistic at best as well. So, and in this day of age, most Chinese are doing, receiving information from Kuaishou and TikTok and Weibo. And for our American friends, I think they get a lot of personalized information too. So under these circumstances, I think the need to have face-to-face interaction to really get to know one another is only highlighted more than previously. So I think
but are you thinking more, right? If this needs to be done, can this take place on the technology platform, which will probably be easier, or do you really think in-person interaction is going to be missed?
Okay, speaking from personal experience, I think a couple of the I would say mind-blowing moments, life-changing moments, things that define my understanding of other cultures and people and societies are those through person-to-person interaction. For example, very briefly, when I was 15, I took my first airplane. I went to Australia, Brisbane, Australia, as an exchange student. So and met my wonderful host family over there, Aussies. So even now, China, Australia, they don't have the best relationship. But personally, when I think about my host, experience there, the person to person, personal connections, I still feel something very warm in my heart. Things like this. So I think if my personal experience is of any indication, I think it's important that we can use technology to some extent, but it's much more important to travel. And I think it's in our nature to want to travel and to meet people. So, yeah.
Penny?
I would, approach the question from a separate angle. I've been thinking about this question: how would COVID change the world? How would it change humanity? Would it make it better? Would it make it worse? And at the start of the COVID itself, a lot of people said, "Well, never waste a crisis, right? Especially since we've paid the price for it. So we should really learn, to be much more humane and really become part of the community that we belong to, and so on and so forth." I had a lot of hopes in the beginning, and then I sat down and I started thinking about, when was the last time that we, human beings as a race, met with a huge crisis that we all face almost all together, that had an impact or not, on humanity, on the way that we deal with things. And I sort of brought myself back to the Second World War. That's probably, the last time where, a large-scale event, negative event, impacted us. And I can only say that, when I thought about that, and I thought about human behaviors thereafter, I don't think that we have really changed that much. We are still chasing things that matters, but not so much. For example, material, dollar and cents, and so on and so forth. These are things that matters. You can't live without it, right? But is that something that should consume your entire life? Is that something that should, be prioritized above that of family, or even just, doing good to your neighbors and your community and so on? Maybe not, So I really, I think that was also the reason why, I've decided to go stronger on this mindful leadership thing. I may or may not be successful. I might be a fool in trying to, change things because hard habit dies hard. But I think, and it could be really idealistic, but I think, if you don't live ideals, then, it may not be a life that's worth living, right? You need to have a purpose in life. So on that note itself, I'm still hopeful, and I still think that, it's going to be hard, for us to change our old habits. But if we come together, we can really leverage on this crisis to at least progress humanity by just this little bit more. On the part of communication, face to face and so on, I share, Wang's thoughts. The only thing is that when I look at my niece or my nephews, I suddenly realize that they are super comfortable just, linking up with people via the social media. So I wonder if I'm a little bit outdated, but even if I am, I think the human touch is what gives us, that resilience and also, that learning. So I'll make sure that I keep in touch with Wang and the rest, of course.
Here. Hope I can travel to Singapore again soon. I'll come to Beijing. You guys, all of you.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm a true believer in how humans always have a way to find solutions. So that's why we're seeing so many new ideas right now, even though, we have just been through and are still in this crisis. Anam, what are you seeing at the people-to-people level through your work?
I think I agree with everything that's already been said. I think that, you know, human connection, the physical touch, being in each other's presence is so instrumental to how we see ourselves and each other and how we can just connect, right? But at the same time, I think what I do see is a lot more maybe a hybrid kind of models where technology is used more effectively, I hope, you know, hand in hand, of course, with travel and with, you know, face-to-face connection. And I think one of, you know, in my work, I've been trying to use technology even prior to COVID, because it's not just COVID that's halted or that's, you know, made these interactions difficult. It is also politics, right? So for instance, in India and Pakistan, the border is so divisive, it's so hard to travel in any case. So what I am hoping for actually, you know, one of the learnings that I hope we can take away is becoming a little bit more comfortable with using digital tools to form connections and forge connections in settings where it's really hard to actually cross physical borders and boundaries. I think that I have seen a lot of artists, in fact, connect with new communities and for different art forms to even become more accessible, free. You know, we've seen theater performances online, we've seen music performances online. So that is something that I hope we see continue in, you know, the post-pandemic world, where we allow this this kind of push that you know, I'm not a tech savvy person, but I've been forced to use technology more effectively. So I hope we can continue to do that, to form new collaborations which weren't possible, to reach new audiences, which wasn't possible before this. And, you know, I say hybrid because you can still have, and you must have, in-person interactions and performances, but maybe there's a way to also make those same performances more accessible to a wider audience. So I'm trying to be optimistic about that. But you know, having said that, you know, I think it's definitely not something that can replace human connection and people-to-people, you know, interactions on ground and face-to-face. Yeah.
On that, I actually wanted each one of you to share a story that really, truly has touched you over the last few months, that makes you feel that we're really sharing a bond as simply human to human. You know, despite the politics, the differences are, you know, nationality, country background, different opinions, religions, you know, despite all that, what has truly touched you? And in the meantime, after that, we're going to go to the questions and answers session. So for those of you who are watching, please enter your questions here in the chat box so we can come to you. Who wants to go first? Guan, probably, since you're a journalist, you're seeing a lot of stories.
Well, actually, I'm still trying to think of one specific thing, but
I can, yeah. If it takes time for you guys to think about it, I can probably go first
yeah, go ahead.
So, in my other role, I work for an online education platform that connects American teachers with Chinese students and Chinese teachers with American students online. Everything is online. During COVID, if everyone remembers, it started in China. So many of our teachers in America who deeply care about their students wanted to send masks over to China. So we shipped over 3,000 masks. Simply, you know, just voluntarily, teachers donated masks. They want to make sure their kids, you know, students are really protected. And 1 month later, it started in the United States. And that's when you see Chinese parents and Chinese students who care about their teachers were in a rush to try to donate masks to America, because actually the US didn't have enough PPEs because there is no culture of wearing masks, etc. And international shipping was difficult. But you know, a lot of students ended up, in addition to sending in masks, they also send messages to their teacher. And one student, one 5-year-old girl from Wuhan, video really stick with me. So she was telling her teacher that there's nothing to fear. I'm 5 years old and I just went through this and I'm fine. So there's nothing to fear. And together we can fight the virus together. That was so touching, and that video went viral among our teacher community. I think that's the kind of human bond. And of course, you know, we all know what's happening between US and China over the last 2 years or so. But the high level politics doesn't have any interference in terms of human to human connection, because these are teachers and students. They interact daily, and their love and their caring for each other only deepens because of the COVID. So I think that's a very compelling story, just when it comes to, you know, what human beings are. So who wants to share?
Okay, I'll give it a shot. Actually, you know, I cover a lot of political stories and news. I just want to share a personal story of mine, if you don't mind. So basically, around this time last year, I relocated back from a Washington-based reporter to Beijing, partly because U.S.-China media / journalist relations got a little tense, to say the least. I was not among the February-March batch of Chinese journalists who were expelled, but it was pretty close, and relations were bad. So we decided that it's wiser that we left. And you know, my daughter was like 29 days old back then, so I had to leave her and the mother behind. And then we know what happened to COVID and the lockdowns, first in China and then in America. And the relationship got so bad. Flights were canceled, delayed, and restricted. And because my daughter was born in the US, she needs travel documents, a visa. We finally got her one a few months ago. And then I'm in Shanghai hotel right now because they're about to come out of their 14-day quarantine. So I'm about to see my daughter for the first time in a year. I left her when she was 29 days old, and now she's 13 months. So why she's only back now? Because of course, COVID, China, US media, journalist relations that got bad, travel restrictions, stuff like that. So I think that I really want China-US relations to improve, because it really has a huge impact on me and my personal life. What we saw over the years, I think, was a lot of families like myself got impacted across the Pacific, which was really bad, sometimes ugly. I think we let politics get in the way of our people-to-people exchange a big way. You know, whenever I can, I advise senior leaders in my country that, you know, even when Trump administration expelled Chinese journalists, maybe we should not do the same, because you know, those Western journalists in Beijing tell stories about China to the Western audience that's in an effective manner. So stop the tit for tat, you know, get the relationship back on course. That's really my personal and professional hope.
Thank you for sharing that, and I can't wait for you to reunite with your family. I think we're all cheering for you, but it's testing our resilience as well. So many families have been separated because of this disease, not only across borders, even in the same country. I know a lot of people have not been able to gather with their families. So kudos to our tenacity and resilience. Anam, do you want to share a story that touches you the most?
Yes, Wenchi, I've been thinking since you asked this question, and you know, I think there have been so many people that I've seen and just stories around me that I've read about and heard about that have been so moving, that have spoken to this resilience. I know that, some of Asia 21 members themselves, like Saber in Pakistan, when there was early lockdown and there were many communities cut off from basic necessities, the way that he and other people have come forth to defy really all odds against all risks to make sure that, they are helping people, they're supporting people, and that the stories of the people who are being impacted are coming out. We're not forgetting about particular communities. I think all of that has just been so heartening. There's no one particular story that I can think of right now, but just I think there has been something about, people really coming together. And I've seen that all over the world, right? I was in Pakistan. I was stuck there for about 6 months, and I saw what was happening there. I'm in Toronto right now. And everywhere, as much as there are challenges and hindrances and limitations and loss and division, you also really, really do see people trying to defy all odds to come together and help. And even platforms like these, right, which are enabling us to share and exchange, just see these experiences which give hope. I think that's what we have to hold on to right now, are these stories, and it's hope. Yeah.
Penny?
Yeah, I agree. There's just so many good stories of people, that stands out during this period, this difficult period. But there is one story that really, tugs at the heartstring that came out of China. I think during the Wuhan lockdown itself, there was a girl who was, I think, I may not get, the full details of the story right, but it goes something like this. So she was actually outside of Wuhan. Her family lives in Wuhan, but she was outside Wuhan. And she was a nurse or a trainee doctor or something like that. And, when the entire Wuhan was locked down, she had, of course, a choice, to just stay where she was, which was quite far away. But she decided that, if Wuhan needs help, she has to be there. And therefore, she decided, that she will make her own way there, because she wasn't one of the uniform or medical practitioners who have been asked to help Wuhan, but she decided she will make her own way there. And then at every step of the way, she realized that there was no bus, no car, no coach, no special service, transportation, public transport, that will go to Wuhan. Nobody wants to go there. So, because she was determined to help and to put her profession into good use, she employed all means available, including walking. And I'm not talking about walking for 10 miles or something. I think she actually walked for days. She, borrowed a bicycle. She tried to hop on, a taxi. She tried to hitchhike. She tried all means just to get herself to Wuhan. And it was, I think, after like a week or something of travel, that she finally made it to Wuhan and joined in the forces at the height of the COVID in Wuhan itself. I think these are the sort of stories and the kind of people who deserves a lot more, thanks, attention, and value than we usually, attach to them. So, for me, I will always remember this young lady. She was very young, I think in the 20s. And, it's people like that who inspires us to do something that is much more meaningful and something that really matters to humanity.
Well, on that note, we're going to open up for question and answer. I see that there's a question for Penny already from Wenbo. Do you have some good advice or lesson learned from Singapore or other ASEAN countries for combating COVID-19?
Well, I think, Singapore is a very small country. So in a sense, you can use it as a test lab for many things, whether it is coming up with a standard set of protocols to tackle crises in COVID, or to test certain communications and so on. I think for me, if I could just speak, off the cuff, there would be just three things, that I think Singapore did very well. The first is, of course, transparency and clarity in our communications. So we know that, there are a lot of things that we do not know about, COVID. And we also know that, there will be a lot of fake news and misrepresentations of COVID. So what we did was we tried to broadcast, what we know and transmit this information and messages in all the languages and dialects that you can find in Singapore. So Singapore has 4 official languages: Malay, Tamil, English, and Mandarin. But then we have a whole plethora of dialects amongst these groups. So we try to actually use both dialects, so that it reaches, the elderly, and at the same time use, all the other official languages to reach those who are more educated and literate and younger. So that's one. So, the communication itself. And again, if I could relate back to the time when we were fighting SARS, and it was the first major health crisis in Singapore, the question that we had, in our parliamentary caucus was, how much information should we be giving up without, underrepresenting, but also without causing unnecessary alarm, right? How do you, have that balance itself? If you tell too much, it might become totally unnecessary and people go into a state of panic. That could be around on the banks, that could be around the health system, and so on and so forth, right? People can also become very unfriendly with each other and neighbors, right? At the same time, if you tell too little, then you're not being transparent. When something, huge happens, then, fingers will point, and that will also lower trust, such that it's hard to take the next step forward together as a collective, people. So the first is, learning to balance, the too much and too little information, and, the clarity of this communication itself is important. The second is to also start to build platforms to communicate with the outside world, outside world meaning, with other countries, because a small country doesn't have all the solutions. And, we know that, a lot of these innovations or even discoveries and so on and so forth is going to come, from outside Singapore. And therefore, to maintain a line into science, into technology, into, global organizations, WHO and so on and so forth, as well as academic agencies and so on, so that, we could be moving in sync with them, and they could also, have higher level of trust and familiarity with Singapore amidst, unusual times. And this is important because right now we are trying to reactivate our travel industry, our hospitality industry, but that means that other countries, if they have not been communicating with us for the past 9 months, I think it'll be very difficult to restart, a travel bubble kind of conversation. But because we've always been in touch and, we've always, been quite transparent, that many nations are now willing, to talk to us and to test some of these travel bubbles, which is very, very crucial to, our economy. So, that, connection itself and that trust building process itself, is extremely important. And the third, I think, is the word care, right? As politicians, and even just as leaders, we need to show genuine, authentic care, for the people whose life, are affected by how we think and what policies we implement. So, on one hand, we want to make sure that the economic policies are good. So in the case of Singapore, we were lucky to have a huge reserve. So we were able to, dish out $100 billion to, get us through this COVID. And what that does is that ensures that people continue to have jobs. They don't lose their jobs. And therefore, they continue to bring bread home families can be as normal as possible. We know it's not, normal but it is as normal as possible. And that is very important if you want to keep a sense of calm in the society itself. And on the other hand, we also know that it's not just about the sense. You got to make sure that the care extends to people touch. So if people are in quarantine, then make sure that, neighbors, friends, organizations deliver food right down to their doorstep itself. So that, they feel, although they are being quarantined, they don't feel isolated. And we take care of the mental well-being, and we try to encourage, people to get together, of course, digitally, virtually, and in very small groups. So I think, it's these three areas I think matters in the point. Yeah.
A question for Anam. How do you deal with issues of privacy and security of your interviewees when you're conducting your interviews? Are there concerns for researchers about doing interviews online? A great question, I think,
Oh, that's actually a question. Yeah. It's a question that I've been thinking about a lot. So I have not been doing interviews online with any kind of sensitive communities or, interviewees where I feel like there might be any ethical questions. So what I'm actually working on right now is trying to build a program where I can instill oral history skills and writing skills within young, diaspora community, like migrant families, so they can go and do this work within their own families. And we're looking at the ethics and protocols of that. But to answer this question more generally, I think it is even more essential to think about these factors online than it is offline. But a lot of the same protocols would apply, in terms of where are you encrypting these or not, or where are you kind of storing these interviews, permissions, whether you need to use different names, anonymity, sensitive issues, do you publish those or not, and then of course in terms of, actually if you're recording them online, which I'm not at this point, but if you are, then what platforms you're using. So for instance, for some of the stories, journalistic pieces that I've done with journalists in Kashmir, I've had to be very particular. In many cases, I've decided not to make those calls just because I know of the sensitivity. So I think sometimes as storytellers, journalists, researchers, we also have to see when not to push too much and to really kind of make sure that we're keeping people safe as much as we can. So yeah, great question. Something I'm still thinking about. Yeah.
Actually, I think that's a question that can potentially bring the whole world together again, as each country is dealing with this challenge in various ways. So. The last question from Sanjeev, which is also my question. So what can we at Asia 21 community do in this regard? And how can Asia society be helpful to the network? Any actionable items we can activate on in 2021?
I'll mute myself. Well, very quickly, I think other panelists can add to what I have to say. I think one thing is that I found that after 2017, I'm a member of the class of 2017, after the get-together, physical get-together in Melbourne, Australia, we went our separate ways. And then it was a bit difficult to keep in touch with, my fellow Asian 21 fellows. WeChat is not trusted and widely used in, for example, the Western world. Whereas WhatsApp, Facebook, those apps are not really available here in China. So I feel that it is important to have a platform that is effective and that is, used daily by fellow Asia 21 fellows, so that we can communicate in a meaningful and timely way. Because, if you use WeChat, like WeChat groups are really powerful. But for WhatsApp users, they prefer those things. I think we need a medium of communication that is effective and, routinely used so that we can connect better.
Great recommendation for Sanjeev and other Asia 21 team members. Perhaps we can build an Asia 21 sort of communication platform. I know we have that, a database before, but something perhaps even easier for people to use and access. Any other recommendations?
Well, I just want to echo, yes, I think this communication platform is essential. I also think that, given how big and wide the network is, there are going to be so many best practices that emerge from this year, things that worked. And I would love to see all of that come together, whether that's through an online publication or offline, but just something about these stories from different sectors, people with different expertise, how they manage, how they navigate it, because I think these are lessons for the future. I'm sure work is already being done, but it would be incredible to see it all and then widely disseminated, hopefully next year. I think we can all learn within the community and beyond Asia 21.
I would echo, the rest that communication is pivotal, and maybe it's not just communication, but really connectedness, right? The ability to stay connected easily. It's important, and I don't know whether there is some interoperable system that could be used to integrate some of this social media that we're already on. That's certainly something that I know some technologies are working on. I wonder if there's any Asia 21 technologists who is actually onto it. If yes, then perhaps we should all hop in to help. Separately, of course, I've talked about the mindful leadership community that we are building with Asia Society, and therefore I hope that this is an actionable, a concrete, actionable item that all can join in. Yeah.
I saw a recommendation from Handra for using Facebook, but my understanding is that, Facebook is also not that easily accessible in China in particular, right? So I think we do have to deal with this issue in terms of interoperable platform, as I would say geopolitics in some way has truly made the internet a more segmented system rather than a global internet. We only have 1 minute left, so if there are other words from panelists, but before that, I just want to say thank you everyone for joining this discussion. The goal is really to come back to the human basics, despite the challenges. And I know technology seems to be the common thread in our discussion, but I also think it's not the bullet that can solve all our problems. So, coming back to what is common among us as human beings, the sapiens, I like to use that term, is what, I think we need to rediscover from ourselves. One thing I learned recently is simply having empathy for each other. I think in the past few years, we're seeing some people, politicians, sort of framing empathy as a sign of weakness. It is not, and I think we need to embrace it. It's the only thing that makes us understand each other and be able to work together. So we all look at the same moon, as someone said before. We all live on the only planet. So I just want to thank Asia 21 for bringing us together, so we can really re-experience, I should say, what's common among all of us, despite the distances and the barriers that we may have. Any last word?
I just want to add on to what you've said, and for me, it's really to be reminded, of gratitude, to always be grateful in whatever conditions that, we're in. It can always be wished. And, therefore, allow me to take this opportunity to give thanks to Asia Society for bringing us all together, to Sanjeev, Tom, Tenzin, and Chung, and everyone else, on this team that we don't see, that brought us, this platform, this summit, and of course, my fellow panelists, and all those who stayed up so late to, join in this panel discussion. So really, thank you so much. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. For that, I know it's late over Asia, so have a good night. And for those who are in America, we're just starting the day, and have a wonderful day.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see you in other sessions. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.